As a real estate agent, you know that the industry can be tough to navigate, with constant challenges and obstacles to overcome. That's why we created the Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate podcast, where top performing agents share their insights and strategies for success. Join us as we dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a thriving real estate business. Your host, Lindsay Favazza, will be your guide on this journey. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from the best in the business.
Welcome back to the Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of the most successful realtors in the industry. I'm your host, Lindsay Favazza, and today I will be interviewing a trailblazer, a visionary, and a transformative force in the new development segment of real estate, focused in mixed use and resort residential new developments. I am talking to Hana Cha. In just over a decade, Hana has risen from a sales receptionist at a new development high-rise to a leading real estate advisor and broker, leaving an indelible mark on projects exceeding $4 billion across America. Today, we're going to uncover the secrets behind her rapid ascent in this competitive industry, her unique strategies that have cemented her status as a luminary, and how she's infusing purpose and authenticity into every aspect of her work. So, buckle up as we get ready to learn, get inspired, and maybe even transform the way we approach real estate ourselves. So welcome to the podcast today, Hana.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. What a pleasure it is to spend the morning with you today.
I know. So you had reached out to us and we looked at your stats and your resume and we're like, yeah, we have to have her on the podcast. So I'm so excited. We're finally here. We're finally doing it and everyone gets to hear your story. So why don't you start at the beginning? Tell us how you got into real estate, maybe what you were doing prior that led into that, and what those early days and stuff like that were like for real estate for you.
Of course. Well, so I got into real estate with zero plans to get into this industry. I moved to LA from Seattle after university. My first job after school was at Sony Pictures International. So I was working in entertainment thinking that was my path. And I was there for about 3 years when I realized, wow, this just isn't how I want to spend, my life. Yeah. And so as I was looking for different opportunities, and, I was all of barely 23 years old, I was meeting with people and just having conversations just about like, what am I supposed to do? This is, I've only had one job. I have no idea. I don't know that many people in LA outside of the entertainment industry. And I was on my way to a lunch one day to actually meet somebody who was in real estate that a mutual friend connected me with. And again, no background in real estate, have no idea, but just wanting to be open to having conversations with people that knew what they were doing with their lives.
Yeah.
And so on my way to lunch, I actually got into the elevator and met the developer or the owner of this building I was in the elevator with. And literally from the ground floor to the 23rd floor, we had a brief conversation. Just who he asked me who I was there to meet. So, so forth. Happened to be we're going to the same office. And this lunch turned into kind of I'm meeting this woman to have a conversation about real estate. And now the owner of the building is joining us. And we all went to lunch.
No pressure.
And really, that's how it started. I was intrigued by her story. I was intrigued by, what the developer was telling me. Again, no background in any of it other than, wow, there's so many cool things I could learn. And I've already met two amazing people. Why not? And so obviously at the time, because I wasn't licensed, and I was telling them I was looking for an opportunity, they offered me a job to be the receptionist at this building. And this project had just launched to market for sale. And this was in 2008, right? So it was not the greatest of times. But again, having no background, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So
that was normal to you back then. And then everything else after that seemed fine, I'm sure.
Right. And so that's how it started. I took the gig 2 weeks later. And while I was in that role, I signed up for my real estate course online. I did the exam, did all of those things. And then from there, it was really, I don't want to be a receptionist forever. Like, what do I do now? Like, after I got my license, like, do I start selling? And it was really working in that team and learning about new developments that I realized, okay, there's so many different components and players that make up a sales team. You have your transaction coordinator, you have like the sales concierge, your bona fide assistant, then you have your junior salespeople, your senior salespeople, and then you have your sales manager. And so it was like me just absorbing as much information as I could, going, okay, I can do that job. Can I try that job? I want to do that. Like, I can do that better than that person can. I want to do that on the next
Yeah.
project. So that's how it all started.
That's amazing. So what were some of those roles that you had? Did you you went from receptionist to
I
what
went
was the
from
path?
receptionist to transaction coordinator. Like most states, I feel like new development contracts are very different than your standard,
Yeah.
here in California, your CAR forms or your NAR forms. And so it was really, it's paper pushing, but for me, it was like, okay, this is really going to give me the opportunity to understand the transaction component of
Absolutely.
this and like
Yeah.
what's involved in buying real estate. And so I went from a receptionist to a transaction coordinator. I learned so much about new construction financing, Fannie guidelines, pre-sale requirements. There were all of these different things that typically when you're selling or buying resale, you don't have to think about these things. So it was a whole nother world of like nuances and details that I was exposed to. And then after being a transaction coordinator, I realized the salespeople were making so much more money. I mean, to be honest. And so I was like, I want to try
I
selling.
wanna do that. Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And so I convinced my broker at the time, they had a full sales team, but I was like, okay, can I just have 1 or 2 days on the sales floor? And I'll keep, I'll continue with the transaction coordinator role. Like, I'm not going to stop that, but I want to try selling. And I think immediately when I started selling, I fell in love with it. And I also realized I was really good at it.
Yeah.
And so I went from like a part-time sales person to the next project we were on. I was full-time sales. And then, because at that point I had mastered contracts and I understood all of the financing stuff. And so I was able to sit down with buyers and agents that were coming into this building and have that conversation of like, what's different, what's involved, next steps, here's what we're working towards. And so that allowed me to get into my next role, which was the sales manager. And as a sales manager, you really kind of touch everything.
Yeah.
And it was a big job for me at that time because, I was almost 25 at that point. So,
Wow. That's a young
yeah.
sales manager.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you had all the experience to kinda back it up at that point.
Yeah. I said, I'm not going to stop learning. And I kind of played a utility player too. Like when our sales admin was out, I was at the reception desk, like taking appointments and doing admin work. And if our transaction coordinator was, overwhelmed, I stepped in and I helped her. If we needed, somebody on the floor. So I think that just being open to, okay, I can fill these different roles because I've done it and I understand. And also, I never really had an ego. Like it wasn't, no job was too big or small. Like I just wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
I think that's really what helped me to excel and thrive in that space.
Yeah, it sounds like you were an MVP because you were able to really help in so many different places, and that must have been a very valuable person to have
Yeah,
around.
yeah, yeah. And I think it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of learning for me. It was just, I think every time it was truly a learning opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
even now, it's like sometimes I still play the utility player, and it's like, God, things have changed, and you're always learning.
Do you think that if you had started in sales, it
Hmm.
would have been the same? Do you think you would have felt like it would have been harder to kinda get caught up, or do you think the path obviously, like hindsight, the path that you took is the path that got you where you are. So there's
Right.
that. But, do you think it would have been harder for you if you had started right from the sales position?
Maybe not harder, but it definitely would have been different because, I do think there was so much I learned kind of coming from that entry level stage where, my first year in real estate, I probably made $18,000,
Mhm.
right? So it wasn't like I was seeing big money, and I genuinely worked hard to, like, you know, then the next year I made like $30,000, the next year I made 60,000. So I worked my way up, and that definitely gave me a sense of, okay, like, it's hard work, it's multifaceted. I truly don't believe, everybody says, just get your real estate license, just get your real estate license. You could be a realtor. Like, I don't know what those people are thinking and why they would give anybody that advice, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. It's not that easy. You don't just start
No,
selling all these homes. They don't just
exactly.
fall from the sky, especially now.
Exactly.
So you definitely have a focus, obviously, in the developmental side. So talk to us about that. Talk to us about the nuances of that. And then I
Hmm.
also want to hear about some of the bigger projects that you've worked on, because I know that there was one like a Ritz-Carlton
Hmm.
experience. There was stuff like that. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that world.
Well, so I think because I started in development, and it was such a multifaceted industry, I never really wanted to leave. I will say I did have a little 8-month period where I did try resale. And I did all right because I had, at that point, a handful of clients that I had sold to in these high-rise buildings. So I was getting referrals that way. But new development to me was just so much more dynamic, and I felt like I was constantly, I had to use my brain. I had to stretch my brain. I had to think outside the box, and it was so much more, I think, fun for me in that every day was a different day.
Mhm.
I have worked on a couple of different Ritz-Carlton projects on the West Coast. I've been involved on, a Four Seasons, a Mandarin Oriental, Six Senses. So, a lot of the brand names, which I feel like most agents see as like the trophy projects, I have touched. I will say those projects are way harder than non-branded because you don't, with the branded projects, you have a lot of corporate politics and you're dealing with the
Mm.
brand itself. So it's not just, the developer and the development team who's your client, but you have to kind of include and report to all these other people.
Mm. So what is a development project? What is kind of the phases of that? So when do you get started? How does it all
Hmm.
work? Like, how do they
Hmm.
bring you to the mix? Like, how does that go down?
Yeah, so when I first started the industry, it was really a matter of when a project is ready to launch for market, developers will go and look for listing agents or listing teams, essentially, right? And then you pitch
Mhm.
for the listing. Over the years, I have gotten involved at a much earlier stage. And so as a development advisor now, a lot of times developers will reach out to me long before a project is ready to
Yep.
sell on market. And so I get involved as early as, when they have after land acquisition and they're going through feasibility and trying to understand what they need to build and who they need to build for.
Mhm.
And I go through a series of, what we call design development to identify exactly who the target demographic is, what the market needs.
Wow.
Is there certain retail components that would help residential sales? Is there, retail components that would help the local community
Wow.
grow in that particular pocket? And then, we'll look at everything from floor plans, programming, what sort of amenity spaces does this buyer profile want and need? What people willing to pay for? Where's the price threshold? All of those different things.
So really, I mean, I'm a marketer. So in my mind, what you just described is they don't just build what they want to build. They start
Some
out,
do. Some
I
do.
mean, some do, and then they
Yeah.
probably sit for a little while because they didn't do the
Yeah.
research, but
Yeah.
it's so smart to think that they're like, okay, we now have this plot of land. Let's do all the research up front as to what would be the best use case for this land. Like you
Right.
said, like, is it a mixed use? Is it, just residential only? Is there, what are the components of it? And that you
Mhm.
get to be involved in that process. I mean, you're more than just like listing and selling these units. You're
Right.
actually hand in hand with them from the beginning of the process. That's so cool. I didn't realize that.
Exactly. Yeah, and so much of my business now is more of that than
Yeah.
selling. Because I think that we've had some great times in the market where developers could build anything they want and it
Yeah.
would sell, right? That's obviously no longer the case. So there is a lot more thoughtful planning that needs to happen up front. And developers, especially when you're working with institutional developers, they do a much more thorough kind of due diligence period where they're identifying, it's all about research and data. And so I think it's good that they do that, but also those developers tend to get, I call them financial mechanics, because they forget that they're still, at the end of the day, trying to build homes for people that are looking for a space to live
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I think that is so important. And look, there's so many developers out there that are still building whatever they want without taking into consideration what the
That's
market needs
crazy.
and what the people need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't build a product based on what you want. You have to build it based on what your client's
I
going to
mean,
want.
unless you plan on buying it, right? All of it.
And then that's probably not going to work out very well in your business plan. So
Exactly.
tell me, I want to get into the client relationship side of this then, because I
Mhm.
have to assume that your
Mhm.
clients are very, not difficult, but
Mhm.
they're harder to get their attention. They're not a typical
Right.
seller where it's like you have a great listing appointment and boom, you've got the
Mhm.
listing. This is a little
Mhm.
bit different and I'm sure highly competitive. So, how do you tell the audience that's listening today, if there's someone there that is thinking of themselves, I
Mhm.
would love to do more development kind of work. How do I get
Mhm.
in with those people? What is that
Mhm.
kind of advice that you can give to them?
Well, with developers and if you're initially trying to, establish some sort of rapport and build a relationship with them, I think it's first and foremost really important to ask them the questions and understand what their business goals are, right? That's first and foremost. Because obviously at the end of the day, every developer wants to sell everything as fast as they can for as much money as
Mm,
they can, right? Like that's the obvious. And so asking the questions of, what is it that would make your partner or your partnership with me invaluable? And I think it's really listening and understanding what that means. I also
mhm,
think it's so important to be knowledgeable beyond just your local market as it relates to real estate. Like it's important to understand what's happening in the community, how it's changed or evolved. Like if there's gentrification happening, what is missing? How do you bring additional value to the developer that is just beyond price per square feet and what the comps are, right? So I think being able to have those conversations and helping the developer understand that what they're building is really affecting that entire neighborhood and
mhm.
beyond.
So, you were talking about how the builders are building for the clients and you're trying to
Mhm.
get in with those builders. So if you
Mhm.
come to them with what those clients are going to help, what the neighborhood's looking for, what that research is ahead of time, then you probably will have a little bit of a leg in the door because then they can see that you're thinking
Exactly.
in that same way.
Exactly. And I feel like developers always know another developer. And the best way that, to get new development projects is referrals.
Mhm.
And when you can focus on one developer client and really give them your 110%, your full undivided attention and bring knowledge to the table that they don't have, that's when they'll say to their other developer friends, hey, you have to work with so and so, like have a
Mhm.
conversation with this person.
So how would someone go about kind of trying to get those types of clients? So is it
Hmm.
you see a development starting and you go in there to try to talk to them, or do they already have someone at that point and it's kind of too late? Like,
Hmm.
how do you get in front of those people? Like, what's the
Hmm.
lead generation component to that?
Well, I think And I'm just gonna tell you from my experience when
Yeah.
after my first 3 projects, which I worked on with the same developer that I met in the elevator when I got into the business. After that, it was now, okay, they're done. They have no more projects. How am I gonna figure out what the next project is? And I was just really on the ground in the weeds, and I would drive through the city, and anytime I
Yeah.
saw some sort of construction happening, I would kind of stalk it. I would drive around all the time, and if I saw somebody there, I would walk in, have a conversation, figure out who the GC is, see if the GC could connect me to the owner, and just get as much information. There were times where like I would see certain projects like fenced off, and I would do everything I can to like find a hole that I can stick my head
I'm
in
just
and go
picturing you being like
like
more than likely in heels. I can't see your feet, but you're probably wearing heels and you're probably like dressed to the nines and you're just like poking your eyes through.
yeah, like anybody
Hello.
there? Yeah, can I talk to anybody? And also too, I think every major city now has some sort of real estate, newsletter or website or, thing, and stay on top of that.
Yeah.
If you know how to pull city records, I would go in and see who has submitted permits or if there's a new project coming online and just kind of I would say it's multi-pronged, but trying to get FaceTime, even if it's like at a construction site. Look, if you go into a construction site a couple of times every week and you're seeing the same construction guys, like there will be a time when the GC is there with the owner or the developer and they'll say, oh my God, this crazy girl has been here like every day for the last month.
Knocking us
Please,
through the
please talk to her,
Yeah.
please talk to her.
Yeah.
And that's how I got started. I was relentless. I didn't care.
I love that. And, I think I talk to a lot of agents and I'm training with agents all the time. And one of the biggest things I hear, and usually it's more in the marketing sense where they don't want to put stuff out on social or they want to, be
Mhm.
careful of what they say, but they have this imposter syndrome that they are concerned about. Like they're afraid to, say that they're doing something when they're not, or like to
Right, right.
fake it till they make it is something that a lot of people really worry
Mhm,
about because it's like, well, what if
mhm,
someone calls me out and I don't have those sales or I haven't worked with a developer before or
mhm.
so, what's your advice to people like that, are scared of kind of that or like what kind of, what can they do to get over that fear, I guess?
Well, I think there's I don't love the term fake it till you make it, but there is a sense of truth in that. I think
Mm,
when people say, well, the way that I hear fake it till you make it, it's really continuing to ask the questions and almost relaying that even though, I don't have that experience, like I know people that do and I have the resources and I am accessible and I have the tools to figure out exactly what we need to do and how to get you in the right
mhm.
place.
I love it.
And I think when you have those honest conversations and they can see, because developers love hungry agents, right? They love that passion that certain agents bring forth. And it's not even because everybody has to start somewhere. Like
Yeah.
you don't just get your first development project out of like, you don't have 10 under your belt all of a sudden. Like you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And when you're able to have those conversations in a way that is meaningful to the developer, the person that you're having the conversation with, and really bring this sense of, authentic tenacity. Like I
Mhm.
will do whatever it takes. Like I'm connected to this entire network. I can, I may not have the answers, but like I know how to get the answers.
I love that. I love that. We have an agent in our company that she now sells
Mhm.
50 to 60 homes a year, like
I
without
love
blinking an
it.
eye. But
Uh-huh.
she tells a story of how when she started that she would say, you know, we have sold this amount of homes, even though she hadn't, like the
Yeah,
company had. So she's like, I would kind of fake, like, I would say that we have, and then they would just believe that it was me.
right.
So
No,
it's a little bit of
totally.
like it's pulling, just like you said, it's pulling on the experiences of your
Mhm,
resources, not
mhm.
necessarily your own, until you have your own to kind of fall on.
Right. I mean, and when with the agents that like I know, whether I have long-term relationships or I have worked with them or not, like if you're connected with me, I always say, look, I have just become an additional resource, an additional tool in your tool belt. So if you
Exactly.
come across a development project and you don't know, hit me up. Like
Yeah.
I would love to answer any questions. I would love to, help you go through the steps you need to get in front of this person.
I love that. So, where are you today in your career? Are you still mainly focused on sales? Are you in more of that leadership role where you're helping? So, tell
Mhm.
me what your day to day looks like now.
Well, today I'm not selling as much, and I say that I'm really not selling. I can't say at all because I do have projects I am selling,
You
but I
got to
do.
keep you got to keep a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I always bring on, and this is my whole like model is depending on where the project is and what market it is, because I do have clients all over the country, and I'm not licensed in every state in the U.S. So depending on where the project is, I do identify the right agent or the right agent
Got it.
teams to get in front of the developer and essentially, partner with them as the listing agent or the listing team on the ground.
Got it.
And a lot of developers have in-house sales agents too. So, I do a little bit of, and I hate using the term sales training, but I do a little bit of sales guidance, what I call.
Mentorship or yeah.
Exactly, and kind of how to work through a sales program, especially with some of these bigger projects. You're selling them for 5, 6, 7 years,
Yeah.
right? So it's not one listing that you sign for 6 months and hope it sells. So most of my business right now is the advising and consulting work through the early stages and bringing it to market to help best position and kind of identifying the right pieces and partners to essentially run an entire sales program. And
Got
then
it.
the other pillar of it, last year I just launched an online program called the Assembly, which is essentially an agent's guide to getting into new development. Taking you through how to pitch a developer and the different nuances that's important to touch on, and through all the different phases of design development, pre-sales, financing, marketing, market positioning, all of that. And so anybody that signs up for the assembly, just like I said before, like I become an additional resource and tool. So there you are. You may not have any experience in selling new development, but like I have a ton, and guess what? Like I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do.
That's great. So, I'm assuming you'll make sure that we have all that info so that if anyone that is listening today wants to sign up for that, that they can and that they can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
That sounds
Absolutely.
great. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes so if anyone's interested, they can check that out for sure. That's awesome.
Love it.
So tell me, we've only got a few minutes left here, but I want to hear two last questions because this is
Mhm.
very fun and very interesting to me. So first question is, and I love to ask this question because I feel like it really is like an entertaining question usually. But tell me what is a crazy or memorable, maybe it's not crazy like funny, but maybe it's just the most memorable thing that's happened to you in real estate.
The most memorable, God, I'll share a funny one. I'll share
Okay,
a funny
great.
one with you.
Those are the best.
So when I was selling one of my first projects, and I was probably maybe 3 years into this business, and I want to say quite naive still. It's much more naive than I am now.
Yeah.
But I was dealing with my first kind of billionaire family. And, they were in LA, they're foreigners looking to buy a couple of things, as investments. And I was touring the oldest son to this family and completely inappropriate. And this is way before the Me Too movement and way before any of this
I
stuff,
can
right?
imagine, yeah.
So I'm touring this guy, and we're like on top floor, like penthouse in a building, and we're looking out at the views, and he's loving it. And suddenly he turns over to me, and he just asks me, if I buy this penthouse, can you wear a French maid outfit and clean the apartment for me?
And you're like, "Bye. I'm out of here."
But also, Lindsay, I wanted to get the deal done. I was
You're
like,
like,
in my brain, I was like, oh my God, like,
it's crazy.
what a dick, right?
Yeah.
But I just, I like, made an
Did he
awkward.
buy it?
He bought it. Well, I said to him,
And then you just like ghosted him after that. You're like, I don't
well,
care about referrals. I don't care.
I said to him, I look much better in a kimono than a French maid outfit.
Oh,
I,
that's good.
I'm not even Japanese. But I was just so like taken aback, and then we just laughed it off. Everybody laughed it off. The agent was mortified, right? And
I'm
like
sure.
I made that comment, and we all just laughed, and then like immediately changed subject. He
Oh
did
my God.
buy. He bought a couple of things. It was fine, but like that wouldn't happen today.
They had no, they wouldn't have the, yeah, that would be very risky to do today
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. Yep. That is so funny. You sounds like you were thinking on your toes there and kind of
Yeah.
made the best of it. So
Yeah.
I love that. So, final question is more in the realm of marketing. So what do
Mhm.
you do to market yourself, especially where, most agents, they're on social media, they're sending out
Mhm.
postcards, they're doing that kind of stuff. But with the development work, is there
Mhm.
other ways that you can get your name out there so that, these people will know who you are before you're
Mhm.
peering through the gate at their
Yeah.
development? What are
Well,
some of
look,
those things that you do?
for me, myself at this point, I don't market myself too much. Like nine 99.9% of my business does come from
Referral.
referrals.
Got it.
Yeah. But for new agents that are trying to get into this space, I would say the number one thing is to talk about it. To talk about it with your existing clients, with new clients, with your colleagues, with anybody.
Yeah.
And even if the conversation is, I want to get into new development. I saw this new building. I saw this thing going under, it's under construction. Like, do you know what's happening? I want to get in front of the owner. I want to get in front of the developer. Like, and I think creating content, all of that is great and supplemental, but
Yeah.
having conversations, like actual conversations, talking to people about this is the most impactful way because, you just never know. And I believe that the universe is so purposeful in who it connects and how these things happen. And the universe can only bring you what you're asking for, right? So
Mhm,
in order
mhm.
for the universe to bring it to you, you have to put it out there. Say, hey, I want this project. I want to get in front of this client and just tell everybody and talk about it with anybody that's willing to have the conversation with you.
I love it. Well, I think the universe brought us together today, and I'm very, very excited for that. I hope that you'll stay in touch with us and keep us posted on all the new things that
Absolutely.
you're doing. And I definitely think that this episode will get a lot of traction just because it's such a kind of niche that you have, and it's unlike any episode that we've ever done. So I am
Oh, I
so
love it.
grateful to you for sharing and for reaching out to us. That's amazing. Like usually we have to beg people to come here. So to having you reach out to me, it was like, I don't have to do anything. I just get to interview her. This is great. So thank you so much for that. This has been
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Any closing parting words that you have for the audience before we end?
I would just say, real estate is such a fascinating industry. And if you truly love this business, there is so much more out there in this space than you know. And I don't care how much you know, there is more. And
Mhm.
so just continue moving forward, continue being passionate, and, make sure you are always just feeling fulfilled and passionate about the deal, the client, the thing you're chasing,
I love
and
it.
everything else will fall into place.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Hana. I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
everybody,
you, Lindsay.
for listening today. And like I said, if you want access to the assembly that she was talking about before, or if you want to see her social media or do any of those things, you can go right here. But you can also, go to the show notes in the episode and check it out. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to our listeners. We really appreciate you. We'll see you on the next episode of The Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Agents Who Crush It in Real Estate podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with your friends and colleagues, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you're interested in being a guest, email us at info@crushitinre.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to crush it in real estate.